This is Twit.
Google Senior VP Sundar Pichai announced this morning on a blog post a new project called Android Wear, which he said is Android extended to wearables. Pichai said Google is working with companies that will make smartwatches based on Android that will ship this year. The watches will ship this year. These companies include Asus, HTC, LG, Motorola, Samsung, and even Fossil. Moments after Google's announcement this morning, LG announced a smartwatch called the G Watch, which Engadget says may ship next quarter, and Motorola announced this morning a new smartwatch called the Moto 360. With us to talk about this story is Killian Bell, who writes for Cult of Android, among other sites. Welcome, Killian.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Now, we knew Google was working on a smartwatch with LG and a wearables platform and all that, but what did we learn in Pichai's announcement this morning?
Well, we learned that this is how Android for the smartwatch is done properly. We've already seen some Android-powered smartwatches from the likes of Samsung, and there was a small company called iMwatch that made one a while ago. And this kind of highlights just how badly they executed that vision of Android on a smartwatch. This is how you bring Google Now to the wrist and how you do it properly. The promo video that Google put out today, it's so elegant the way all of it works for just a few simple swipes, and it puts everything on your wrist precisely when you need it. We all know how big Google Now's been on the smartphone, and this just puts it right on your wrist.
Well, the video looks elegant from the sense that it's very Google Now centric, and to the point where it makes me wonder whether that's what it is. It's Google Now, and not a platform where developers can build apps that run on the device. Maybe it's just a Google Now thing, and developers will simply be creating cards or something like that. But what wasn't elegant was the wristwatch. Some of the watches that they show in the video are just gigantic. They're exactly the thing that made smartwatches fail in the past. It looks like a big blocky square thing lashed to the wrist, and it's it's a form factor that's kind of yesterday's failed platform. What do you think about that?
Well, I think I didn't really get much of a chance to see the Moto 360. I was on the call when Motorola announced it, but I'm just taking a look at some of the pictures now, and I think that kind of goes against that a bit. It's a really, really nice looking device, and when you compare it to something like the Galaxy Gear, it's quite the opposite.
You're absolutely right about that. Now, just for those who are listening rather than watching, Google's video that accompanied Sundar Pichai's blog post showed a variety of watches. Some of them were, as I described, big, blocky, square things that look very unnatural on the wrist, and others were, as Killian described, especially the Moto 360 watch, which is round. It looks, when it's not running the sort of Google software interface, can look exactly like a traditional, elegant, it's a very beautiful watch. And again, it's round. It kind of sticks up above the wrist a bit, but it is round and pleasant. I would certainly wear it. So hopefully that's the case. And it has a round touch screen.
That is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Even though it makes perfect sense, because
Yes.
watches just often, at least watches that aren't screens, are round.
Yeah.
I wonder how that, and forgive me because I haven't really read into this too much, and I doubt there's much details or information at this point, but I wonder how that scales easily for developers to be able to write apps that scale to round versus square, because that's just something that I haven't thought of before. That's got to be kind of a challenge from a development standpoint.
Absolutely. And Mitch, have you ever seen a device with a round touchscreen before?
I never have. It really strikes me as a major engineering challenge. I do see a bigger picture here, though, which is, I already have a computer in my pocket. Why do I need one on my wrist? That's not an original thought to me. It was an essay I read that was speculating about what Apple might be doing in wearables last week.
Well, I can answer that for you, Mitch.
Okay.
At least with my own theory. My own theory is that with wearable computing, you really get it when you do it. It's kind of like the iPad. When everybody described the iPad before it shipped, everybody thought, well, who needs that? A low-powered, underpowered tablet I already have a phone in my pocket. What do I need an iPad for? But once you use an iPad, you're like, wow, this is really cool. You know, I really could use this for lots of things. It was mostly the feeling that it gives you when you use it. It feels good to use. And I have the feeling that these wearables, and I certainly have the feeling when I use Google Glass sometimes, the feeling that it gives you of having information right there, it's a different relationship with information. It's a different relationship with the internet. It's a different relationship with communicating with the people you care about or people you know in business or whatever. And so the big advantage of wearables, at least in the early days, is going to be how it makes you feel. It feels really good to do that, and it changes your behavior because of how it feels. At least that's my theory. What do you think, Killian? Are you a booster of wearable computing?
Yeah, definitely. I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said you don't know you need it until you try it. I've been using a Galaxy Gear for the past few weeks, and I wasn't really interested in it until Samsung sent me one to test. And like you said, until you've got the notifications on your wrist and you can read text messages while you're having a meal in a restaurant, you don't want to be rude and pull out your phone. But when you've got it on your wrist and it's right there, it kind of it flips it around. You don't think you'll need it because you've got the smartphone, but then in some ways you think, well, why do I need to read my text messages on my smartphone anymore? They're right there on my wrist, and until I need to reply to them, I don't need to get my phone out of my pocket.
Exactly. And the best case scenario, I think, for all of this is for Google to handle the hard parts of this, for Google to handle the round interface for anybody who wants a round interface. And remember, the smartwatches, as Sundar Pichai pointed out, is just the beginning. Their platform is for all wearables, presumably not Google Glass, but for wearables in general. Sundar Pichai recently specified a smart jacket. So not only are these devices likely to have weird shaped screens like round screens, but they're also likely to have no screen and use only a voice interface. And some may not have a voice interface at all. They may be mostly sensor based or whatever. So hopefully, if Google does this right, if they really want to knock this out of the park, they'll handle all the hard stuff. They'll handle the integration of apps coming from the phone and then being displayed through Google Now, being interacted with through the voice interface of Google Now. And we've already seen some indication that that's the case. I think it was last year or 2 years ago or something like that. We saw information showing up around their Android at Home functionality. Killian, you write for Cult of Android. I also write for Cult of Android, and I wrote a piece for that blog about this, where they actually showed home automation details that were associated with Google Now cards. So apparently Google Now is going to be the big interface for, I would guess, Google's whole Internet of Things, which includes home automation, it includes wearable computing, it includes the sensors that both of those areas of technology will use. So again, Google is not beyond screwing this up, though. They very well could come out with a platform, an SDK, and all the rest that is difficult to write for, that's off-putting, and so we'll see how that goes. But they certainly have a huge challenge. Now, Killian, this we mentioned the Google Now centric aspect of this, and certainly the promotional video was very Google Now centric. Do you have any indication whether that's it for app developers? They have to write the app for the phone and then the information pops up in Google Now? Or is there any indication that there's actually going to be the ability to write apps that are downloaded to the device and running on the device?
That's going to be the interesting bit for me, because Google said that it's going to be pushing out an SDK this week for Android Wear, but there doesn't appear to be an app drawer like you have on an Android smartphone. Sorry, there's nowhere to store apps. It all looks like it's very much integrated into Google Now. So it'll be interesting to see when those first third-party services come along. It'll be interesting to see how they run on Android Wear.
It's also interesting, Mitch, that Sundar Pichai said that this will enable multi-screen interface so that the smartwatches, for example, and probably other wearable devices will be used for controlling a phone and presumably also televisions and stuff like that. So that sounds pretty cool to me. I'd love to be able to control my TV with a watch. I'd love to be able to start playing music with a watch that plays over there, either on the phone or on on a PC or on a TV or something like
Control
that.
your Chromecast from your watch.
Yeah, wouldn't that be
I'd
cool?
use that every day.
So is that a compelling interface, Mitch? What do you think? What do you think about the future of this multi-screen vision that Pichai hinted at here?
It seems candidly to be even less compelling than the text message interface, because if I'm listening to music or watching TV, I'm probably in a position where it's even more convenient for me to get out my phone or my tablet. I do think wearable computing in general has a future. I just think it's going to be a tough sell with a watch. I think we might see a finger ring, be more popular.
Yeah.
Just a little thing to serve as a proximity sensor for authentication, and maybe it'll vibrate when you have a text message.
And maybe be usable as a kind of gesture interface of some kind. That would be cool. Although rings are such jewelry-oriented devices that you really, who's gonna buy their jewelry from Google?
So are watches, though.
Well, yes, but they're I don't know. It's watches. The form factor for watches is. You just kind of have to make it macho looking, or you have to make it techie looking, or you have to make it somewhat elegant and business looking.
Not
Rings
here
are
in the
different.
21st century. You and I are 20th century guys, and we wore watches when we were younger, and some of them looked like crap. But now today, watches it's either your phone or it's a really fine piece of jewelry.
So
I don't think there's much of a middle ground anymore.
All right. Well, we'll see what the devices are that come out. Killian, what's your best guess, or what information do you have about when all this will be coming out? The APIs, the watches, all of that.
Google said it's putting out its SDK this week, and Motorola, I think you said in the second quarter of this year is gonna bring out Moto 360. But other than that, that's pretty much all we know about it right now.
All right. Well, thank you, Killian, for coming on at the very last minute. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. You can find Killian at cultofandroid.com, also cultofmac.com, and on Twitter at Killian Bell. That's KILLIANBELL. Thanks again.